So this video is basically about La Paz, Bolivia. And I have, as you've noticed from a lot of the videos, I have a thing for living in big cities for a certain amount of time, then I got bored, then I moved to the next city. So really La Paz is like a dream, as New York and as in Europe, living in London, living in Barcelona, living in La Paz is a dream come true. Why? Because it's like a high altitude city with a lot of culture and a lot of biodiversity. Not La Paz because it's too high, but like if you move from there to other places. So I always wanted to live in a country that had different cultural background than Costa Rica or the States, and Bolivia was like really the place I spent the most amount of time at. I think I spent a total of a year in Bolivia, maybe a little bit less in several times that I came to collect data for my master's thesis. But at the same time, I was like really immersed in all the Bolivian scene, and I was friends with a lot of mostly international development consultants, like people funded by USAID, that did a lot of environmental or social projects that had to do with indigenismo. And this was like very exciting at the time because Evo Morales had just become president. So there was all this like resurgence of like what minorities were in the world. There were all these like scientists, social scientists coming in to study political science. At the time, I was like kind of sick of science, of biology, and I wanted to branch into a new field. So just learning about political science was just very exciting, going to all those receptions. It was a time of my life that I felt very connected to learning about political science, anthropology, sociology. And I went to University of Texas, which had a lot of people studying South America. I'll have more. I don't have a lot of discussions about what I think about the academic careers or the NGOs, but I'm a little bit skeptical and disappointed for several reasons. But I'm not gonna describe that right now. So basically, here's Bolivia's landlocked. It lost its coastline to Chile, and I believe the other landlocked country in South America is Paraguay because of another battle that they had with Brazil and Uruguay. So both countries, landlocked countries, lost its coastline due to battles, which is, I think, not surprising. So really, Bolivia's capital is here. And Bolivia, I believe, is the poorest country in South America. Haiti is really the poorest, followed by, I believe, Nicaragua and then Bolivia, but I think that's the order 10 years ago, but it could remain the same. And really, if you look at South America, like, and I think I mentioned this in several videos, like Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia are relatively similar. Colombia and Venezuela are relatively similar. Chile, Argentina, and Uruguay are relatively similar. In Brazil, really, there's nothing similar to Brazil. It's like on its own. So if you're looking at La Paz, and this video is really about La Paz, you have to understand that La Paz is really high up. It's between 3,200 meters and 4,100. So you have, I think in most cities of the world, the highest part of the city is really where a lot of the posh people live, the rich people. But in the case of La Paz, it's really not the case. Like most people, rich people live in Calacoto, which is at the bottom for one reason, because it's warmer, so it's nicer to live there. So this makes it, if you live in the top, then you have to deal with the coldness during the winter season. And you don't really want to deal with this.
It's just less than 2 weeks because of getting back from a wedding.
So there's like there are like buses all the way up to El Alto, which is kind of like an indigenous neighborhood on the top. And El Alto is really where a lot of people from all the provinces come here and sell a lot of their agriculture products, but there's all types of things in El Alto. There's a lot of like witchcraft. There's a lot of other handcrafts that are sold there. So there's like a divide between like El Alto, which is like very, very campesino, and then Calacoto, which is like the ritzy part, Zona Sur. And there are all these neighborhoods around, and I always used to hang out in a neighborhood here called Sopocachi, which was like really, it was kind of like bohemian and artistic, and I always used to hang out in the Alexander by Plaza Baroa. And this was a really nice neighborhood. There were like all these international consultants that lived here. It was actually like the first time I met like these French guys I was working with. I met them at El Alexander here, and I would just rent a place here for like $200 a month, almost nothing, and then I would just hang out with all my friends, which were international consultants. This was a time that I really enjoyed, and I learned a lot about Bolivia. I actually started taking Aymara lessons, and I traveled all over Bolivia to all the different provinces. But La Paz in itself is actually a very interesting city. I don't think it's necessarily a pretty city, a gorgeous city. I think, for example, cities like Rio or Quito or even some cities in Colombia are actually a lot nicer aesthetically and as far as architecture. But La Paz just has a lot going on in the amount of space that you have. So if you go up from Sopocachi into El Alto here, there's the president is like in this side. I forgot exactly how the area is called. And here's like a touristy part called Sagarnaga. And in Sagarnaga, it's like really cool because there's all this witchcraft, there's all this trekking and hiking sites to go all over Bolivia and to do a lot of the trails. And Sagarnaga is just like a wonderful place. I think like I spent all this time just getting lost in Sagarnaga and like looking around and poking into places. And I highly recommend Sagarnaga a lot. And from Sagarnaga, you can get a bus to El Alto. And as I mentioned, El Alto is quite interesting. You can see all the volcanoes from El Alto. So another cool thing about La Paz is like you see from La Paz, Cordillera Real, which is over here. It has like all these huge mountain peaks, including Huayna Potosí, which I climbed. It's 6,100 meters, which is really, really high. Highest I've been, higher than anywhere in Europe, higher than anywhere in North America, higher than anywhere in Australia. So it's really the Asian continent that only has higher peaks, higher than anywhere in Africa, because I believe that Kilimanjaro is less than 6,100, is like 5,000 something. And I have some videos on trekking and mountain climbing if you're interested in. So this is a little bit of La Paz in a sketch of 8 minutes. I hope you like my video.